Hi everyone, this is your grad TA Charlie, and I'm going to make video part 2 of how to combine your graphs where you test multiple treatments on the same bacteria into one more concise graph so that it is better for your poster, so you don't have to include as many graphs and so that it's a little bit easier to look at. So we're going to go back to that same group whose data I was working with before, and they used 3 treatments for E. coli and 3 treatments for Staph aureus. So I've divided this into multiple sheets. This is E. coli with treatment X. You can see here I have the unaveraged replicates and I have the averaged replicates here. And this is going to be, we're going to move this down. Control X, Control V, I'm going to call this E. coli with treatment Y. I'm going to copy this right here so I don't have to type this out again. Oops. We're going to say E. coli treatment replicate Y1. Control Z. This is going to become Y2. And these stay the same. So we still have the BHI media control 1 and 2, treatment control 1 and 2, E. coli bacterial control 1 and 2. These are the same categories. The only thing that's changed is the treatment that we're doing. But we still have the media control, the treatment control, and the E. coli bacterial control, because all of our conditions are essentially the same except the treatment that we're exposing the bacteria to. We were just doing the additional controls to make sure that the wells weren't contaminated. And the treatment control is obviously going to be different because we wanted to make sure that the treatment Y wasn't contaminated, but yeah, bacterial control and BHI media control are going to be the same exact thing. So we're going to go back to the next sheet and do the same thing over. Probably just insert a couple of cells here. E. coli with treatment Z. And we'll just copy this thing again. Just doing Control C, clicking on time, Control V, and then Y is being replaced with Z right here. Now you can do this one of 2 ways. You can average your replicates first for each one like we did here. So here we have the unaveraged replicates E. coli treatment X, and then here we have average replicates treatment X. And you can either average the replicates and then average the relevant things together. I'll just change this to X because I wasn't originally doing this example. So I'll just do this for labeling purposes. Or we can take all of these and do all of the averaging at once. So I'm going to show you how to do all of the averaging at once. Okay. So we're going to make a new sheet. Sheet 8. And we're going to, I'm just going to rename this sheet E. coli averaged. Alright, make life easy. So we're going to go back to sheet 2, and we're going to grab this table of the treatment X. So Control C, add this here, Control V, and then we're going to go to sheet 3, E. coli with treatment Y. Grab this table. Okay, it seems like I made a mistake here when pasting. Okay, we'll just delete the last column of data. If you go back to the original sheet, sheet 1, you can get this last bit of data after 640. Or at 640. But I'm not going to do that. We'll just stop it at 630. So not a problem. So go to sheet 4, E. coli with treatment Z. And yeah, we're just going to stop at 6 hours and 30 minutes. It's important that everything be consistent. So I'm just going to delete this. We can just shift cells however we want. We'll just shift them up. Why not? What we need to get rid of is this time here. So I'm going to highlight this column. Because we don't need multiple columns of time. This is just going to be our x-axis. We don't need this multiple times. Just double check this is indeed recording. Yes, okay, cool. So we're going to highlight this, scroll over to the next spot that says time, hit Control, select this as well. I'm going to left click, delete, and that took care of that. Okay. So now we want to make our chart that's going to have everything so that we can graph it. So we're going to go over to the side here. So the first thing that we need is going to be time, right? Because we need an x-axis. So Control C, time. I'm just going to scoot that over. Control. Okay, copy paste here, not the same size. Whatever. Just highlight up here at the AB. Sometimes Excel is very particular, but we have time now. Time is scooted over. And so this says E. coli treatment replicate X1 and X2. So we're not going to have treatment replicates. We're just going to have E. coli treatment X. So here, move here, E. coli treatment X. All right. Aha. So here we have BHI media control 1 and 2 for E. coli treatment replicate X. We also have, moving here after E. coli treatment replicate Y, BHI media control 1 and 2 here after treatment replicate Y, and so on and so forth. So we're going to worry about that after we've put in all of the treatments. So let's go through and put in all of the E. coli treatments. So we're going to do E. coli treatment X, E. coli treatment Y, and E. coli treatment Z. Then we're going to do E. coli treatment control Y, or sorry, E. coli treatment control X, E. coli treatment control Y, and E. coli treatment control Z. And honestly, so I'm not sure if you can average all of your treatment controls. I wouldn't, just because they're different treatments and you don't want to compare apples to oranges. But I'm not, while it's good to show them on a graph, if your graph ends up looking like a giant mess, I wouldn't necessarily worry about showing them. You could just put this in a table and show your beginning and ending ODs for your treatment controls averaged and not put them on the graph. I'm going to graph them, but if it's a big mess, don't worry about it. So let's check this off. What do we have? So we have E. coli treatment replicate 1. We have treatment replicate 2, treatment control 1, treatment control 2, treatment replicate Y, treatment replicate Y2. Like, these are going to get averaged. So we have the treatment controls for Y. We have the treatments for Z. So I'm highlighting these in green to check them off. And we have the treatment controls for Z. So treatment replicates for Z, or treatments for Z, sorry, we're not going to do replicates, we're going to average them. And we have the treatment controls for Z. So next on our table, oh, and we have okay. So next on our table is media control. So we have media control for all of these. So we have a total of 6 media controls, 2 for each E. coli treatment. So we're just going to make one column here that says BHI media controls. I would leave this as plural, controls with an S. So I'm going to put this in a lighter green, but you get the point. Okay. And then we have to have the E. coli bacterial control, which gives us the background that we're comparing all of this to see how well the E. coli grows. But we can assume that the E. coli is going to grow about the same because all of this was inoculated into an 8-well strip at the same time into the same amount of BHI, put in the spectrophotometer at the same period of time under the same atmospheric conditions, under the same temperature conditions. Everything was pretty much the same in the spectrophotometer. So we can average the bacterial controls to say on average the E. coli grow at this rate, and on average the ODs go from this to this during this time. So we're going to title this E. coli bacterial controls with an S again. Okay, so how are we going to do this? E. coli treatment X. So we're going to go to formulas, insert function, average. We're going to scroll over, and we're going to select E. coli treatment replicate X1 for number 1, and for number 2, we're going to select X2 right here. So it's this number, so we're going to average the column B and column C, essentially. So it's averaging E. coli treatment replicate X1 and X2 when you click and drag. So we get 0.0935, which makes sense because we have 0.095 and 0.092 as our starting ODs. So click and drag down, and it fills the chart. For treatment Y, it's going to be the same thing. Insert function, average, scoot this over. We're going to go to treatment Y. Number 1 is going to be here. It's field J4. And this is going to change based on whatever your layout is, but for me it's J4 and K4, averaging these two columns. Click OK. Drag this down. It autofills. And here we can already see that treatment X seems to have inhibited it better than treatment Y, just based on the ending ODs versus the beginning ODs, which were very similar. We're going to go to treatment Z. Same thing, insert function, average, scoot over, R4, and S4. Okay, and we can say that this is probably the least effective treatment, just based on the ODs. But we'll see this in graphical form. Now, we have the treatment controls, which are going to be exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to go through this without talking, and you can watch or just skip forward. Oh, and the treatment control, by the way, has a lower starting OD, typically because bacteria have a certain opacity, and they up your optical density. And if your treatment is translucent, for your treatment control, you're going to have a lower optical density total versus if you're starting with living cells. So that's why generally for that, like if you look at these starting ODs, there's a difference. So it's not that that the E. coli treatment was initially contaminated, quote unquote. I mean, there was initially bacteria, but that was the whole point, right? We inoculated it with bacteria. But if you use like iodine, for example, your treatment control is going to have a higher starting OD than you would initially expect than if you used alcohol, which is a clear liquid. Okay, here's where it actually gets interesting. So now we have to average more than two things together, and Excel can do this. It can average more than two columns at once. You just have to be careful where you click. So we're going to average all of our BHI media controls in one go. So sounds pretty amazing, right? So we're going to do insert function, average. So number 1, scroll all the way to the left. See here, BHI media control 1 after treatment X. Number 2, BHI media control 2. Notice here how number 3 popped up under your function arguments. That means you can average 3 different things. So let's see. 2. Scooting over here. Number 3. And as soon as we put something in number 3, a 4th number pops up. So we're just going to keep doing this and keep filling in with the different media controls. And there should be a total of 6. So we have 5, and then we can scroll, and here's 6. So make sure you get all of the media controls for BHI. I'm going to click OK. And it calculated it to be 0.057833. Click and drag. So some of these numbers have long decimals, but that's okay. But as you can see, the OD didn't really change. All right. So the same thing we're going to do for the E. coli bacterial controls. We're going to go to insert function, average, same exact thing, but I'll go through it with you one more time. So here we have E. coli bacterial control 1 and 2. So we're going to go to number 1 here. E. coli bacterial control 1 is well H4. Number 2, well I4. Click on number 3. E. coli bacterial control after treatment control Y. This is well P4. Then we want well Q4. For number 5, we go scroll over, one more. E. coli bacterial control 1 after treatment control Z. This is a well X4. Scroll down here, and well Y4. Click OK. And it fills it in. Then we can see here the OD increases from 0.1 all the way to 0.7. So this grows better than anything else, which makes sense. As the bacterial control, it means it grew better than anything with the treatments. Now to graph this, what does this look like? We're going to highlight everything here. Go to Insert, 2D line, and need to add axes titles, very important. OD 600 nanometers. Here axes title is going to be time. Chart title, E. coli treatments X, Y, E. coli treatment efficacy averages. And right now you can't really see much on this graph. Like, we don't have too many lines here. We can identify this, but I don't really like the way this looks, to be honest. So let's see. Obviously make it bigger. And if you just drag it up, you change the y-axis here, and that spreads it out so that you spread out your curves more. And you can see that your treatment controls are all close to the zero, or all close to flat. And then you have your treatments here, your 3 treatments right here. And then this is your bacterial controls. So don't be afraid to make your charts bigger, especially in the y-axis direction. We don't really need too much as far as the time being spread out, but we do need to be able to see the differences in OD. And what I think is helpful is like text boxes, for example. So let's see, text box here. All right, let's see, how do we want to do this? Bacterial controls. And we can rotate this way. Should we choose to? And then you can label this as well if you like, but you have the legend down here. So unless something's like really if something's really ambiguous, you can feel free to add the text boxes and rotate this. You can change the font size here, the font styles, the alignment. You can change the orientation of the text, all of that. Rotate this around, move it, whatever you want with it. But it's not necessary, but sometimes it can help break up some ambiguity in your chart. That's about it for this video. I believe I've covered everything. One important thing to note is you cannot, under any circumstances, do this for things where you have different bacteria. Like, you cannot do this if you have E. coli and staph. You can't put them on the same chart because your bacterial controls are not the same thing. E. coli and staph, you're comparing to completely different organisms. So their growth rates are different. They respond to everything differently. You don't want to do that. So you can only do this if you have different treatments of the same bacteria. That's when I would do this, just to condense your data so you're not putting a million different graphs on your posters. So hopefully this is helpful. You can email me if you have any questions. And I wish you all a good night.